Hello, and welcome to our presentation on community responsive schools. The Southeast Raleigh YMCA and Elementary School creates pathways for an emerging neighborhood and its residents to build a better future through access to education, wellness, and healthy foods. I'd like to give our presenters an opportunity to introduce themselves. Betty?
Hi, I'm Betty Parker, Real Estate Services Senior Director for the Wake County Public School System.
Hi, I'm Tim Carr. I'm Senior Vice President for Real Estate Development and Facility Management with the YMCA of the Triangle area.
My name is Marcella Rory. I'm the Senior Director of Long Range Planning for the Wake County Public School System.
My name's Hal Bowen. I'm a principal with Ratio in our Raleigh studio, and I've worked with the Wake County Public School System on the design of schools for over 30 years and with the YMCA of the Triangle for over 20 years. So these are our 4 learning objectives for today. First, we'd like to understand the factors that influence economic mobility challenges of the Southeast Raleigh community and examine the impact of access to quality social infrastructure components. Secondly, we're going to learn about the synergies available in a unique collaboration that pairs multiple community organizations and facilities. We're also going to learn how public-private partnership plays a role in this project. And we're going to learn how innovative partnerships such as this can enhance learning environments and positively impact the educational curriculum.
YMCA of the Triangle area is an association that actually consists of 21 activity centers and 3 overnight camps in 7 counties that are around the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Research Triangle area and on the North Carolina coast. We strive to build relationships within our communities that we serve and to seek new relationships within communities of need, and also to lead the change that's needed in those communities. Our mission compels us to embrace, reflect, and celebrate the richness of diversity within each other and the many communities that we serve. We're committed to nurturing the potential of children through youth development, for improving the community's health and well-being by promoting healthy living, and fostering a sense of social responsibility by providing opportunities to give back and to support our neighbors. I've had the honor of leading our real estate development initiatives and our facilities management team for almost 6 years now. Prior to joining the Y staff, I was a volunteer and a parent who saw the amazing character building skills that were offered by the Y to so many individuals and communities. As an architectural engineer, I have spent a good portion of my career engaged in planning, design, and construction within several K-12 public school systems in the Carolinas and Tennessee. I was fortunate to join the Y just at the point where staff and volunteers had narrowed down the Southeast Raleigh YMCA site selection to just 2 locations. The point that I became involved in the process was well along a continuum of activities, commitments, and engagements by the Y in the community. The Y has offered programs in Southeast Raleigh for nearly 80 years. Over the last 15 years, these programs have focused more on the needs of children and teens. The after-school and summer camp programs have grown significantly in the last several years, adding sports programs and other activities with a focus on health and wellness and family activities. One great example that I always like to bring up that was really the impetus for the collaboration that we're presenting to you today is the after-school program at Walnut Creek Elementary School. It's also in the Southeast Raleigh community, and it's also a Wake County public school. The Y leaders at this very robust program for children in an underserved community saw the need to engage families more. The parents of the children were invited to a very low-cost group exercise program set on the parameters of YUSA's diabetes prevention program. The response was so overwhelming that several classes had to be added within a very short period of time. The parents could participate in the group exercise program while their children were enjoying extended after-school activities. This level of interest was one of the key indicators that led the YMCA board to explore building a facility in this community. How? We can move to the next slide. Several years before I was given the task of due diligence for the potential sites, the YMCA began exploring possible locations for an activity center in the community and formed a task force of community leaders to find an appropriate location for a new Y. After about 9 months, the task force realized that there were just too many challenges in the community and that the Y would be unable to adequately solve these challenges on its own. So this task force began to ask the question, what if we did something bigger? And what would bigger really look like? So for more than 2 years, YMCA staff, community leaders, and volunteers gathered community input and data about expanded YMCA services in Southeast Raleigh. During that time, it became clear that the community's need and desire included much, much more than just a new YMCA with traditional Y services and programs. In 2003, the YMCA hired an independent research firm to conduct a phone survey of residents in Southeast Raleigh. The survey information, along with community interviews and information sessions, guided the Y in efforts to more fully and effectively serve areas of the community that need and want our program. So it was a matter of adapting to understand what the real needs were. Over the last 30 years, and this is some of the information that we found out during this process, there were 2 disturbing trends that have taken root in our community and actually throughout the country. Economic inequality has dramatically increased and social mobility has dramatically decreased. These different but related trends have created a situation where deep intergenerational poverty is an expectation in some areas, and that included Southeast Raleigh. In order for this generation of children to have every opportunity to succeed, a new model of human services and philanthropy was needed. That's what this group concluded. Programs can no longer be isolated in their efforts. No one intervention will be a silver bullet. So nonprofit providers and funders of these efforts, the public sector, businesses, and the entire community were really asked to work together to create a pipeline of interventions that ensure children from Southeast Raleigh have everything that they need to move themselves into productive and happy adulthood. This broader vision for Southeast Raleigh, called a Collective Impact Initiative, includes extensive community input and engagement. The Collective Impact model provides for affordable housing, education, health and wellness, economic development, and leadership development. It helps define the role that the equitable access to social infrastructure can have in helping to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty within the community. As the possibility of a project gained traction, volunteers and leadership within our organization knew that we would need a strong community partner. And so we teamed with Purpose Built Communities Network. This is an organization that we saw at work in Atlanta at the East Lake community. In 2015, working with several funding and leadership foundations based here in the Raleigh area, a community quarterback organization, eventually named the Southeast Raleigh Promise, was created. The YMCA of the Triangle incubated the Southeast Raleigh Promise to lead and coordinate the revitalization efforts of the larger Southeast Raleigh community beyond what we have come to call this beacon site. After 3 years of positioning that quarterback organization for success, Southeast Raleigh Promise launched as an independent 501c3, a nonprofit, in January of 2018. So we are the 16th purpose-built community in the United States. So the Southeast Raleigh Promise combines neighborhood revitalization strategies with a cradle-to-career pipeline of support for children and their families. The mission of the Southeast Raleigh Promise is to ensure that every child in Southeast Raleigh, starting from birth and continuing to college or career, has the skills and support network that they need to be successful. So in collaboration with the community, the YMCA and its partners at the Beacon site are participating in the revitalization of this area of Raleigh.
Southeast Raleigh Promise leads a community initiative on fighting the cycle of intergenerational poverty. Their efforts focused on engaging community members, building partnerships with the Wake County Public School System, local governments, and business leaders, securing funding and securing investments in 5 key areas: education, affordable housing, health and wellness, economic opportunity, and leadership development. On the next slide, we can review the measures of success. With identification of these key areas, the next step for Southeast Raleigh partners, Southeast Raleigh Promise and their partners, were to focus on what the end is so that we can begin with the end in mind. They identified the development measures for each of the 5 key areas. For the Wake County Public School System, it was always a critical point of involvement that all children obtain an education that will ensure their connectivity, self-efficacy, credentials for labor and market value. This is a focus that is a little broader than the school system typically focuses on. And because of the uniqueness of this location and the goal, it's something that we were eager to partner on. Another aspect of the Beacon site includes affordable housing. We have so many children and families who are in difficult home situations. We have a homeless population. And of course, across Wake County, the income levels and housing security varies. In this particular focus area, it's challenged. So affordable housing becomes an educational focused issue as well. From health and wellness, we know we'll be successful when all the residents within the Southeast Raleigh area have the pathways they need for good health care, nutritious food, physical activities. As you'll see in a minute, the location that we've chosen is in a bit of a food desert, and there were a number of other challenges. So this is far more important than you might think. Economic opportunity is also important. The stakeholders wanted to be sure that this area would not only become economically viable by this particular development, but that it would lead to further economic opportunities to help lift this area of Raleigh. And then the last measure of success is leadership development. We'd like to see all the youth that come through these programs and their families not only be wildly successful, but inspire and lead the success of others so that this becomes both an individual and a community long-term success. On the next slide is really the focus that drew the Board of Education and the Wake County Public School System to be in lockstep with the YMCA and with Southeast Raleigh Promise. What we've discovered through the research is that studies have shown that the zip codes where our students are born are leading predictors of not only their educational success, but their economic opportunities and life outcomes. Those who grow up in these low-income neighborhoods lack the same resources and opportunity that we're fortunate to have in other parts of the county. They need access to a quality education, the opportunity to build wealth, and all the tools and focuses we just talked about to help overcome intergenerational poverty. Once we understood those barriers, it was much easier to begin to focus on what needs to happen to move out of poverty and to get that critical first step. On the next slide, it really focuses in on the particular area of impact that our collaboration addressed. This is an area in Southeast Raleigh. There's a major arterial highway, I-40, that runs right through the middle, east-west, and in Raleigh, it's what's known as the Beltline. 2 major highway arterials also intersect there, US 401 and I-40 to the south. This is a particular area that, as you'll see on the next slide, has had a number of challenges. The demographics on the right show you plainly that in this area, we find much higher than in a Wake County average numbers for unemployment, minority population percentages, the number of people living in poverty and transiency, and by comparison, a net lower than average income and home values. This includes a 6 census tract area that's centered on the Beacon site that Tim mentioned. From an educational perspective, the children who lived in this area in 2014-15 school year, which is when we started this analysis, had proficiency scores on the pathway to college and career readiness of only 19.2% in reading and only 19% in math. And that's simply unacceptable. When you compare that to our county average, you'll see that 57% countywide were proficient in reading and 61% in math. Clearly, it's a broad gap that was a wonderful challenge and something that all of the partners were anxious to be part of finding a solution. On the next slide, you'll see an aerial of the location of the project site. It's the area that seems to be mostly cleared. It's just to the left of the arrow and the project site label. You'll notice to the left and right of the project site, for the most part, is an undeveloped swath that surrounds Walnut Creek, a fairly large environmental feature in the Raleigh area. But what it does is it separates the development north of it that's closer to downtown Raleigh from the portion of Southeast Raleigh that's separated to the south. This has become a food desert. There are no grocery stores there, so that people who live close to the project site have quite a distance to travel in one way or the other. It's become a dividing line. The only thing that you see that's developed there is across on the right-hand side, which is actually is an auxiliary services facility for the Wake County Public School System. So for all intents and purposes, it's a bit of an industrial field. On the next slide, you'll see a graphic that shows not only the location of I-40, but the blue line, which is Walnut Creek. One of the great benefits of this site is the Walnut Creek Greenway, as you can see in the green line, stretches very close to Walnut Creek into this site. It offers an accessible point for not only bikers and walkers, but for learning opportunities as well, with direct access from the school. Further to the left, the city of Raleigh has built a water environmental resource center opportunity. So there are learning opportunities that make this a really great location for a future site. On the next slide is an aerial of the condition of the site when we first undertook this collaboration. More than 50 years ago, this site was a chicken processing plant and had a very industrial feel and use. At that time, it was out of town. The beltway didn't connect in that area, so it's fairly isolated. The picture you see here that makes it look so alive with activity is really nothing more than a flea market that's held on Saturdays and Sundays. So the utilization of this site was not something that the town favored. They were looking for an opportunity to have a much greater revitalization and to make it much more of a community asset. And that's exactly what has happened. On the next slide, you'll see the status of this site when we began. A lot of pavement in poor condition, some old buildings that had previously been the structure for the chicken processing plant. In short, it makes for a very blank slate. It also has some challenges like the power lines you'll see here that Tim will talk about in a minute. The next slide is an aerial that I think is great for depicting a few things. One, you can see the heart of downtown Raleigh just off to the right. This is very close to downtown Raleigh and has excellent access to major transportation networks. The aerial of this is so different from the aerial before because this aerial was taken after the YMCA acquired the property. We were able to work with them to develop a collaborative approach for utilization of the site that gave the site oversight, if you will. It kept the site active until the YMCA and the school systems were ready to move ahead with construction. But what it did for us was even larger than that. At the time, the school system was in desperate need of some temporary bus storage. And as you see on the right, that need was met through a collaborative agreement with the Y. Similarly, on the left, you'll see a number of tractor trailers. At that time, we were opening 5 to 6 new schools a year. So the transportation of furniture, storage of furniture and materials, we were well past having sufficient space. So the Y was able to work with us not only to allow us to park tractor trailers on the left portion of the parking lot, but also to fully utilize the warehouse. So although all these areas were bound for demolition, it really gave us an excellent opportunity to maximize the value of that use for the school system in partnership with the Y. And of course, that sort of current presence provides a security benefit as well. The next slide is our site plan. Tim, can you help us with that?
Yes, Betty. And I just want to really emphasize how fortunate the YMCA was to have a partnership with Wake County Public Schools so that as we were planning and developing options for this particular site, and it sat empty, it really didn't sit empty. It was a mutually good utilization of that site. So this, as Betty mentioned, this is the master plan. This is the beacon site. In late 2015, the YMCA acquired the land, and it was at that time 3 separate parcels amounting to about 30 acres. It's located on public transportation route. And as Betty mentioned, it's really in the center of an underdeveloped community that has a lot of potential. The site also provided enormous challenges, what I call both visible and hidden. As the former poultry processing plant, and actually when we bought the property, the owners told us there had been a fish processing there as well. So who knows? It was more recently a flea market. Well, we really set out to green up a brownfield environment. The site has a little bit of everything. There was a lot of rock. There are easements, including a Duke Energy major transmission line that bisects the site. There are communication services that run along Rock Quarry Road that have easements that date back to 1920 and 1930. There's a SHOD, a state highway overlay district that aligns the interstate, and that is a buffer that's required to be in place. So most of the site had these constraints. It is in a floodplain. It has completely unsuitable soils. Our grading contractor found tires and cars and all sorts of things buried under the ground. And lastly, it had 2 documented RECs, the recognized environmental conditions. Those have been resolved, had been resolved before we bought the property. So we set out in the due diligence phase to understand these constraints and determine how best to create a beacon site that could offer the wellness, education, affordable housing, and access to medical services and access to healthy food that the community told us that they were really looking for. Several different concepts were developed, and a cost-benefit analysis was completed. Our strategy included recombining the parcels to the sizes that were more attuned to development within the site constraints, and that would allow us to have adequate support infrastructure like roads and utilities. Through planning and zoning initiatives, a subdivision plan was formalized and a property owners association created to oversee the shared infrastructure and maintain the standards of the City of Raleigh UDO. The subdivision plan and infrastructure layout provide 3 distinct areas that address these community needs. So I'll address them from the obvious to maybe the not so obvious. So lot 1, which is the largest, it's about almost 19 acres. It's what's inside the loop road that you see there. That is the YMCA and the elementary school, and that's really intended to address wellness and education. The site allows for some really great amenities. As I mentioned, we are greening up the site. We have greened up the site. Those amenities include for the school, play field, playgrounds, and parking. And for the YMCA, the same fields, the walking path that is around the fields, an amphitheater and a shelter. We've just recently completed a cover over that amphitheater, an outdoor pool, and a greenway connector. And the greenway connector is really the way that we were able to bring the community to the larger, the broader Raleigh interconnectivity. The second area is lot 2, and that is closest to Rock Quarry Road at the bottom of the screen. That's about a 5-acre parcel. We're referring to that as the mixed use site. That is currently in early development with a socially responsible developer. We are looking potentially at an urgent care, perhaps a small grocer, some incubator spaces on the second floor, and interestingly, perhaps even a library and some other retail functions. So that's the last area to be developed yet, but the infrastructure is in place. And then lot 3 is the affordable housing complex, and it's just under 7 acres. We partnered with DHIC, a strong Raleigh-based affordable housing provider. We challenged them. Their initial design was in the 85 to 86 unit range. And once we initiated a ground lease and approved their development, they had reached 120 units. And the beauty of that is that the school was able to set aside 75 seats for children from that community, so they could literally just walk to school. And I can tell you that that complex is open and all 120 units are occupied. There's a waiting list. So the master site development itself was quite challenging. Fortunately, the school system was able to use the site before we started demolition of existing buildings. But about mid-2017, we began a mass grading process. So we decided to develop all 30 acres at one time. We integrated the site utilities, added all the infrastructure, the stormwater, the landscaping. And in fact, the loop road, a portion of that loop road was actually built through a transportation infrastructure PPP with the city of Raleigh. So it is actually a publicly maintained street. We call it Promise Beacon Circle, and it provides primary access to all three sites. The YMCA's board's strategy is to maintain ownership of the property acquired through generous philanthropic support and to utilize ground leases for lots 2 and 3, the mixed use lot and the affordable housing lot. The Y of the Triangle actually owns the Southeast Raleigh YMCA and the elementary school as a building. And the school portion is used by Wake County Public Schools through a prepaid capital lease with terms that potentially go beyond 50 years. So through a combination of the Wake County CIP funds, new market tax credits, and philanthropy, the Y of the Triangle was able to develop the entire master site, which led to completing the Y school. The benefits of constructing the joint building included the ability to share core spaces and dining facilities. Marcella is going to go into all of that as she dives into the design with Hal. This is really the second joint venture our joint venture is the joint Y and public school that's undertaken by the Y of the Triangle. The first was in Durham, the Lakewood Montessori Middle School, and YMCA opened in 2011. Wake County Public Schools also has several joint use facilities throughout the Raleigh community. And because of this experience of both the Y and the school system, we had a good sense of the types of spaces that can easily be shared and those that are probably best to be separated or duplicated. We also had experience with the logistical hierarchy of a development, lease, and joint use agreement in that order. And we were able to accomplish that to really provide the guide for the project and the joint use. The lease agreement is very specific about the needs of the community. This is an economically distressed and underserved community within the Raleigh MSA census tract, as Betty mentioned. Median family income is about 60% of the median family income throughout the rest of the county and the city. The poverty rate is quite high at 37%, and the unemployment rate is really more than 1.5 times greater than the national average. And as Betty said early, this project area is a designated food desert by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. It's also within a county, Wake County, that FEMA has issued a major disaster declaration for. So what that meant for us was that within the 36 months prior to our site plan submittal, it was eligible for both individual and public assistance. So through the application and eventual acquisition of new market tax credits, a community benefits agreement was initiated and is being executed and implemented as we speak. This includes a matrix of responsibilities and goals for various initiatives through construction, which included a workforce development program and the operation of the Y School in partnership with the Southeast Raleigh Promise. So to give you some highlights of the collaboration, the first was the public-private partnership and in collaboration with the public school system. This is a North Carolina general statute that at the time that Betty and the board and others began to talk about this, it was not as well utilized throughout the state. And so we were able to put that into place. So the YMCA was the developer. With the public school experience that we all had, we knew there were certain parameters that we had to follow in minority business participation as well as competitive bidding. And so we were able to do that, but we were able to do that in through a more private, more developer-oriented format. I mentioned that the Y had similar experience in Durham at the Lakewood Y, and Wake County Public Schools has similar joint use agreements in place as well. I'll let Betty jump in as far as the opportunity for building E46 early.
Thanks, Tim. And before we get there, I would add one quick clarifying note on the public-private partnership statutes. In North Carolina, the opportunity to use them was drawn fairly narrowly in the legislation. The typical public-private partnership arrangement that we would see would be where the school would contract with a developer to build and deliver a school for a lease with year-over-year payments. And at the end, the property would become that of the school systems, usually projected over a 20-year term. One of the challenges we had here was the YMCA's commitment to their community and contributors in undertaking this large project was the requirement that the Y maintain ownership of the property. So that, in a way, opened an opportunity for us to view the public-private partnership in a slightly different way, in a way that was more readily accessible for our use. So it's been an interesting transition. I think Tim is underestimating the process a bit. I think he and I and many of the YMCA and school system leaders worked not only together with the community through Southeast Raleigh Promises leadership, but also with the municipalities, with the City of Raleigh governmental boards and Wake County's governmental boards as well. In terms of the joint use of space, Tim's exactly right. We began the process early, envisioning the end in mind, with how these spaces might be used not only during the day, during the school year, but also outside of those terms. So we've had an opportunity to make arrangements to share playgrounds and parking and play fields, as well as some interior spaces. And it's given us a lot of cost efficiency for the space and a lot of opportunity for the kids that we teach.
We
Tim,
also,
I'm sorry, Marcella?
We also created additional collaboration methods during the course of this project. We created a task force of partners and we engaged them in regular meetings. I think in the beginning, perhaps we're meeting every 2 weeks, then occasionally we meet every month, but we were constantly in contact with that group of people. We were able to quickly discuss the goals, anything that needed to change. We were able to provide updates on the progress of the project. We were able to review plans and ensure that we captured everyone's needs. This task force helped to ensure that everyone remained focused on the same goals throughout the project.
In the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the planning perspectives, and this picks up really where Marcella left off in saying that we definitely had challenge in developing physical space programs and special curriculum programs that would meet the community scholastic needs, but be able to sort of separate themselves from what the standards, now not necessarily the state standards, but certainly the facility planning guidelines that were in place. And so through that task force that Marcella mentioned, there was a lot of give and take. There were a lot of folks, who initially said, we can't have an elementary school with a swimming pool. That's just not possible. And fortunately, the leadership was able to say, well, how can we make it possible? How can we actually begin to step into that? We knew from the community that early childhood development was critical, as it is in many underserved communities. And so the school system was able to look at, well, how can we do that better? How can we make that better? And instead of a two pre-K classroom standard, we were able to actually create a cluster of 4 classrooms in this particular building. Certainly opportunities to learn and practice healthy living, that's the primary objectives and purpose of the YMCA. But the collective curriculum development and the child nutrition services, as well as some of the other community-driven applications of nutritional meals and teaching of families was able to be applied very, very readily. And the joint use agreement can address that, but it also can be adapted each year as needs change and thoughts change. The youth development component, a couple more here. Yeah, the youth development component was of course organized through sports activities and access to all of those outdoor spaces that you saw. And lastly, it was very important that a pedestrian-friendly campus provided connectivity to all the outdoor spaces while still providing the level of security that is expected of both a YMCA and a school.
And as
And
Tim mentioned, I'm sorry, Tim. As Tim mentioned a second ago, not only providing for those particular items, it was also critical that we focus in on the educational components and the things that we would typically provide at an elementary school. So making sure that we're able to ensure the education of the students and also provide for the safety of students throughout the building and throughout the site.
If I could add one quick note, Tim, you mentioned this earlier, and I don't think I picked up the ball and ran with it. The collaboration with the Y gave us the opportunity to build this elementary school 7 years ahead of our planned delivery. We have a data-driven site location process where we work together with municipal planners across the county, together with the Operations and Research Education Lab at the Institute for Transportation Research at NC State University. It's a long name, but they do a big job. They help us to analyze intended growths, current enrollments, our capacity utilizations and existing building capacities to be able to forecast where the next schools need to be to meet the capacity needs of Wake County. We had already identified a target that's almost exactly where the Beacon site was located. We had a schedule for when the land should be acquired and when the school should be undertaken for construction. But the benefit here was because the YMCA was on a faster development pace, we were able to deliver that capacity sooner. The one drawback is typically at that time, we would have delivered an elementary school with a capacity of about 736 students. Because of the site constraints, and in order to ensure the development goals of both partners, our population in this school is limited to 500 students. Although from a countywide capacity standpoint, that sounds like a drawback, for the particular educational needs and goals at this school, having a smaller school is actually a benefit.
The next slide shows outcomes, and it does not voice all of the outcomes. Betty has highlighted one of them just there. In that the individual attention that is needed is really provided. But we are committed as a YMCA to make sure that we're coordinating through the PE program of the school to provide swimming lessons, not only for the children, but for their families. And so that's an amazing resource. And then the workforce development is really focused, through construction, it was focused on Raleigh-based resources. We were able to hire 25 individuals and train them how to do various skills during construction. And our construction manager was able to bring in approximately 37 to 38% of its total construction activities with Southeast Raleigh-based companies. So that workforce development program will continue. We are in the process right now of expanding it through the Wake Tech Community College to include landscape maintenance and janitorial services. So the collaboration required a comprehensive partnership from program development through design, pre-construction services, construction, occupancy, and now into managing the facility. The Y and the Wake County staff and volunteers that participated in the AE qualification process selected Ratio and its consultants, and they launched into schematic design. And at that same time, the same team, the Y and school team, began the process of selecting a CM at risk through a qualification process. And the idea there was to make sure that they had the skills to do pre-construction services and to encourage minority participation. We ended up selecting a CM at risk that had a 50-50 joint venture, a large national firm with a local African-American owned construction manager. So as the project team grew, it continued collaboration through a live design process using value management concepts to balance the design intent within the cost limitations of the budget. And then constructability reviews were completed to ensure that both cost and schedule could be maintained because we had a GMP target and a fixed opening date for the school. So as a sign of its commitment to the outreach and project success, the project team developed this charter that you see to encourage all team participants to educate those who would be joining the team through the course of construction, and generally to affirm the dedication of the project to the community itself.
There we go. Slow slide. So we kicked off the design phase of the project with an interactive workshop that brought together key stakeholders from the Wake County Public School System, the Southeast Raleigh Promise, the YMCA, and other community organizations and members of the design team, where we engaged in 4 interactive exercises. And these were all designed to generate discussion amongst these key stakeholders and help to share project goals and reach consensus for priorities. This workshop was a key first step in an ongoing design dialogue about the possibilities for this beacon site.
This is also a standard process for the Wake County Public School System. One of the things that's really key whenever you're dealing with various stakeholders with various interests and concerns is to make sure that everyone has an opportunity not only to voice their concerns and issues, but also hear, share, and understand those of their of the other stakeholders.
The design team prepared some initial conceptual site plans and floor plans for the workshop. And in one exercise, Keep Costs Create, stakeholders engaged in dialogue with one another about elements that were working, keep, elements that were not working so well, toss, and identified new opportunities on the site, create. Several of these create recommendations ultimately became important program elements within the project, such as developing community gardens, expanding the pre-K program to address the importance of early cognitive development in children, more grade level identity for grade level cohorts, and incorporating outdoor learning environments. Key recurring themes emerged throughout the process, like the importance of unifying the community. The project was examined as an educational tool that would provide a connection to nature and support students' mental and physical well-being. The proximity of the project to the Greenway and the incorporation of community gardens reinforced this educational opportunity. Finally, the theme of family really supported the focus on unity that stakeholders had identified.
The process that Hal just described is actually demonstrates what the Wake County Public School System district-wide initiative refers to as the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. So it was a great opportunity for some of our stakeholders who otherwise wouldn't understand what the 4 C's are to actually begin to take part in that process.
This is a really important slide because it alludes to the complexity of designing a project with multiple clients and stakeholders. The YMCA held the contracts, but the school system was going to occupy 65% of the square footage in the building. And so the design team conducted live design sessions throughout the schematic design and design development phases. And in these sessions, we brought together key stakeholders from the school system, the Y and the Southeast Raleigh Promise, and they discussed project challenges and solutions as the design team manipulated a 3D model on a large screen, as you see here in the photograph. These interactive meetings really helped to facilitate a rapid exchange of ideas and help to create consensus for the design direction. This process helped to overcome the challenges that are inevitable in developing physical space program and special curriculum programs in order to meet the community's scholastic needs, while also complying with the pre-established educational facility planning guidelines of the school system. Through this, a desire emerged for a responsive, community-focused school combined with collaborative programs of the Y, the school system, and the various other community organizations that were focused on social equity investment.
The other thing that's so critical about the process that Hal just described is that it's oftentimes difficult for stakeholders to understand and process how their various requests impact a project. Since Ratio implemented the live design process, starting with their interview and continuing through design, we were able to see and understand in real time what the decisions we were making, how they impacted the project, which was very helpful.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is quoted as saying, "It's always the right time to do the right thing." This project was 15 years in the making, and it had to overcome many challenges of pre-existing standards and guidelines. And as Tim mentioned earlier, it was really only successful because leaders of each of these organizations were willing to take the initiative and make decisions that were outside the comfort zone of many of their stakeholders. We often heard, this is not the way we do things, or we've never done that before, as Tim mentioned with the pool example. But usually after talking through these things, through the live design exercise, through the various committee meetings that were going on, and refocusing on the core objective of meaningful collective impact for this underserved community, we were typically the right thing did emerge.
Now we get to take a look at how does all of this stuff come together. A challenge on any site involving a school is how to safely and effectively deal with vehicular and pedestrian traffic. We needed to get our cars and bus stacking off of the adjacent roadway and onto the site, while simultaneously allowing for the arrival and departure of YMCA patrons and eventually the occupants of the housing and commercial components that Tim mentioned earlier. The site is accessed via a traffic light at Promise Beacon Circle and accommodates a left or right turn onto Rock Quarry Road upon exiting. The drive to the north of the site accommodates an exit only and right turn onto Rock Quarry Road only. There is sidewalk access that allows safe pedestrian access from Rock Quarry onto the site and all throughout the site. Once you've entered the site at Promise Beacon Circle traffic light, the YMCA patrons can immediately access a parking area directly to the north, adjacent to the outdoor swimming pools. Wake County Public School System visitors continue on the loop, and actually the visitors and buses continue on the traffic circle loop and access the parking lot to the north of Playfield 1, which you see on your screen. Our buses and carpool traffic continue on Promise Beacon Circle and go around the Playfield 1, which accommodates the stacking needs without interfering with the other users of the full site. The bus loading area and unloading area is primarily used by the school's yellow buses, but is also shared by the YMCA program buses. Carpool continues beyond the bus loop to a canopied loading and unloading area. The elementary school and YMCA share a loading dock that is to the right of the carpool drop-off area on the loop road. Students from cars and buses access the building to the north under the canopied entry. All YMCA patrons and visitors to the school enter the building through the main courtyard into the inside. It is critical to the team that we provide the ability to safely separate students from other visitors on the site. We have provided the standard site requirements for elementary schools, which you heard Tim mention earlier. We've also provided our standard pre-K play structure, our K2 play structure, a 3-5 play structure, and playfield with a surrounding walking track. Playfield 1 is closer to the size of what we would typically provide for a middle school, but the larger field was needed to accommodate YMCA program needs, so the school got additional play area during the day. The play structures in Playfield 1 are used exclusively by the elementary school during school hours and the YMCA after hours.
So this is the first floor plan of the facility, and it accommodates all the basic structural requirements of a regional YMCA, including a full-size gymnasium that in part was full-size in order to accommodate youth rec leagues, locker rooms. On the upper floor, you'll see shortly, it also includes a couple of aerobic fitness spaces and a wellness center. Outdoor aquatic facility, and then the play fields that Tim mentioned earlier. The program also includes the program requirements of a reduced capacity 503 student Wake County Elementary School, which includes 32 classrooms on 2 levels in grades PK through 5. It includes a media center that you see here highlighted in orange, several collaborative common spaces that we'll talk more about in a minute, a kitchen and dining area, and an indoor play space, along with administrative and student support offices, art and music programs, and the various outdoor play fields and play structures that Marcella has already alluded to. So the dedicated elementary spaces are arrayed along this longer wing on the north side of the site. And the YMCA program is along, including the outdoor aquatic centers along the southern side of the site with shared spaces in between that also overlap into the elementary side on the second level, which we'll show you in a bit. And then, of course, the main entrance through the courtyard is located here. So this, so the design team and Wake County School facility planners toured a local Head Start facility in downtown Raleigh. And met with their faculty to discuss best practices for early child care. And between these conversations and a careful review of their guidelines, that led to some significant changes on this site, including expanding outdoor programs and adding a collaborative commons actually for the pre-K suite, which Marcella is going to elaborate on for you now.
One thing that's really important, and you've heard us mention several times throughout the presentation, is that we have 4 pre-K classrooms on this site. For a typical elementary school, we would only provide 2. However, because of some of the needs that you've heard mentioned earlier during the presentation, we recognized there was a need for us to reach more students to get them what we'll refer to as kindergarten ready. So doubling that amount really will help us do that. It is also important to note that the pre-K areas, while we typically license the outdoor play areas at our standard elementary schools, the indoor spaces are also licensed at this particular facility. 2 of the pre-K classes will be run solely by Wake County Public School System, and then the other 2 will be run by the Head Start program.
So this is a view of the sort of front elevation and sort of main street elevation of the facility that was pushed toward the street to really claim the street, complying with good urban planning principles and requirement of the city of Raleigh's UDO. But this was really intended all along as the visual beacon to sort of draw you into the site. It was never really intended and can't practically function as the true main entrance because of the logistics of parent and bus drop off and all the other sort of security issues that we've previously mentioned. So the actual main entrance, or what we really call the front of the building, is accessed from this courtyard side that has the capacity to connect the student parent drop off and bus drop off and connect with the YMCA patrons parking lot and the school staff lot. This inside courtyard provides a space that can really secure the elementary playground spaces that we're going to talk about in a little more detail here shortly, but it also creates a welcoming and inviting main entrance for all visitors, for YMCA patrons, for visitors to the school. And, you know, it creates a nice, generous outdoor space that the entire student body can convene in. And one of the real nice synergies of this project is you see the pool house and the outdoor aquatic center that's laid along the right side of this main pedestrian promenade. And so as you're kind of approaching the main entry to the facility, which is here, you're surrounded by student elementary gardens and play spaces on your left and aquatic play spaces on your right. And so the sort of the splash pads of the play pool create this really nice acoustic and evaporative cooling effect that as you're walking up, it really provides this entry experience that is so much more than you would have if this was just an elementary school or just a YMCA. It's really like you're approaching the space through a garden.
Which is actually wonderful, but as you know, security at an elementary school is crucial. It's a crucial part of any operation of an elementary school, but especially when you have visitors who would not typically visit school sites. We would typically provide fenced areas for our pre-K play areas and also for our K-1 outdoor gardens and grassy play areas, which Hal has shown on the slide. However, we did not want this to look like a containment area. It is not only critical that this entrance courtyard look welcoming to everyone that's coming on site, but also that it start to look, just simply define areas of where students should be and where the public should be. So as opposed to providing a fence-like structure, that defining areas actually starts to look more like art. So you can see the little vertical pickets along the site. It also undulates throughout the site so that literally starts to feel more artsy, fartsy, and blending into that area.
So the second floor plan includes the 2nd through 5th grade classrooms on the elementary school side. It includes the running track and the wellness facilities and the 2 group fitness rooms on the YMCA side. And during the early visioning and design workshop, the stakeholders expressed a desire for grade level identity. So these shaded spaces represent the collaborative common spaces that support each grade level, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th on this floor. You previously saw the other grade levels. And these spaces really help to kind of serve as the living room in order to provide that increased grade level identity. The distribution of these distinct learning commons helps to ensure that each classroom has direct access to its unique commons, which helps to reinforce that sense of a small learning community. The use of glazing between these spaces helps to support passive supervision and again reinforce that sense of community. And these spaces also help to facilitate collaborative teaching and cooperative learning within the school. This 2nd level also includes the roof garden that you see pictured in the inset picture at the bottom left here and located at the end of the wing above the pre-K classrooms. And this allows the upper grade level students, 2 through 5, to have access, direct access to an outdoor learning space without having to go all the way down stairs. This building really provides an opportunity to extend the instructional day, or for the school to extend the instructional day. Students have access to 2 different after-school opportunities. The enrichment program provides various activities in the arts, STEM, sports. The program also reinforces 2 main principles of the school's positivity project, which are character strengths and homework assistant. For 1 hour, Southeast Raleigh elementary school teachers tutor students. For a 2nd hour, YMCA staff and other community volunteers offer enrichment programs in art, music, STEM, and STEAM for students, faculty, and staff of the elementary school. And the partnership also provides free transportation for all students in the program. Another great synergy of this project. So these are a few photos of some of the collaborative spaces. The one on the left is the pre-K space that we talked about earlier, and some of the older grade levels on the right. And the design team and facility planners, including Marcella, studied models of successful collaborative learning environments throughout the nation. And we identified several features that were really key to the success of these type of environments. And those included, as we've mentioned, a cohort dedicated central common space that really can act as that living room and can reinforce or can provide collaborative breakout opportunities. And interior glazing between the classrooms, which you see in many of these different photos, so that there's a visual connection to that commons, which besides the passive supervision helps to really reinforce that sense of community connectivity. You see the soft seating or the flexible seating, a mixture of both soft seating and tables and chairs to support a wide variety, to provide the flexibility to support a wide variety of activities and learning modalities. Access to wireless technology and to interactive monitors, which helps to reinforce the notion that learning is ubiquitous and that it can happen really anywhere, indoor or outdoor. Any space on this campus pretty much can be considered a learning environment. And finally, two other key principles for the success of these kind of collaborative spaces is that first, teachers have to be trained in collaborative teaching styles and in student-centered pedagogy. And inquiry-based learning is what Wake County Schools calls it now. And school administration and staff leadership need to champion the student-centered model and need to hold teachers accountable. These are just critical elements of making any kind of collaborative learning environment successful.
Typically, we don't provide auditorium spaces at our elementary schools, but what we do provide is a combination dining multi-purpose room space with a stage. This allows us the ability to separate the space. You see the green square to the left of your screen there, which would be our dining space during the day. And then to the right would be our PE space. So they're separated by a movable wall that allows us to open that space and utilize the stage for larger performances. What you'll also see in a minute is that the placement of this space was very important. You heard Hal mention the importance of the glazing a few minutes ago. So you'll be able to see in just a minute how important that particular area is. This space is utilized solely by the school system, as I mentioned, for dining and for PE during the day, but is used in the afternoons for the YMCA after-school programs. This is an interior image of the dining area that you just saw a moment ago. So it provides multiple things, a really light, bright, colorful area for children to dine, but also gives them visual access to that outdoor engaging courtyard. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, sorry, thank you. This is the other side of that movable wall, which shows our PE area. Typically at elementary schools, we would not have the budget to accommodate wood floors, but due to the partnership with the YMCA, we were able to provide that in this situation. And again, you begin to see the play of daylight throughout that space, which really provides a very engaging area for our students. The Media Center, while not initially set up as a joint use or joint space, we wanted to go ahead and design it in such a way where that could happen if in the future that needed to happen for the community. So we placed it where you have immediate access to that courtyard from the Media Center. We placed restrooms with direct access inside that area so that people would not need to access the remainder of the school building. Next slide. The second floor shared areas, as Hal mentioned earlier, are our 5th grade classrooms and one of our general ed classrooms. We needed to make sure that the students had access to everything they needed during the day, but that it could also change uses rather quickly for that second after hours use. We also made sure, if you look to just the left of the pink box, that we could also secure the remainder of that classroom wing. You saw earlier, as Hal mentioned, that the student gardens or raised roof garden is on this floor, and that's where all of our student projects and their growth projects take place. And so we want to make sure that we keep that area secure during after hours usage.
And the 5th grade commons shown in the center of here, the center of the plan in light sort of blue, includes a community kitchen, so that during the day that space is used as 5th grade commons, but at night community organizations, including the Southeast Raleigh Promise, can conduct adult education classes on healthy cooking and eating within that secured space.
The image you see on your screen now shows the interior of the 5th grade Learning Commons. And also you'll see to the right of the screen, the community kitchen. What you'll notice is there are lockers out in that space with a solid surface top that serves 2 purposes. One, what we discovered is that one of the biggest stressors for 5th graders moving on to middle school is the change from having cubbies in your individual classes to moving to lockers out in the corridors. So that's one of the things we wanted to test here and give 5th graders that opportunity to become comfortable in an elementary school environment before moving on to middle school and having access to lockers. The double duty for that is that we can now use that as a food prep service as we are using the community kitchen during after hours for health and food prep. Next slide. Early childhood and play sensory development are very critical. One thing you've probably noticed through some of the images you've seen earlier is that oftentimes the spaces are being used for multiple purposes. What you see in front of you now is an area that was originally designed as an outdoor classroom, if you will. So the space that the image you see now, they're using it for that purpose, but please note, also students can use that to learn balance as they begin to matriculate from higher and lower levels, also a different use of materials. So, and again, in this image, you are able to see that art fence that gives a separation without feeling like a containment in the background. The images you see in front of you now are additional outdoor learning areas. In the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a space that is an outdoor classroom during the day, but can also double as the loading and unloading area for buses and cars. In the upper right-hand corner, you get a great image of the activeness of that courtyard during the day as students are actually working on their growth projects. This is the kindergarten, pre-K, and 1st grade gardens. And also in the lower left-hand corner, you see children that are outside utilizing the reading garden, which is immediately outside the media center. As you've heard mentioned earlier, there are quite a few things here at this school that are not typical for an elementary school. You heard one of the presenters earlier say, no, we don't typically provide a swimming pool at an elementary school. I've become very familiar with the saying that our superintendent has, which is, don't tell me why you can't do something. Tell me how you can do something. And we took that to heart during this project. So here, providing swimming lessons for all students was a critical element of this school. Statistics show that the fatal drowning rate for African American children ages 5 to 14 is almost 3 times that of white children in the same age range. In swimming pools, African American children ages 5 to 19 die at a rate of nearly 5.5 times higher than that of white children in the same age range. So you see, this is a critical need. As you saw outside a few moments ago, the exterior media area being utilized for education, now you see the students inside the media center being able to engage, but also being able to visually connect to those spaces outside. You'll also notice that the students in this image are wearing uniforms. So during regular school days, that is part of the program for this campus, that although not typical at most Wake County public schools. The uniforms are something that helps remove yet another stigma of the haves and the have-nots. In addition to engaging students, we also work to engage the staff. The staff has access to the full-size gym that's on the YMCA side of the building, and also, as you see in the image, an elevated walking track. On that second floor, as Hal mentioned earlier, they also have access to the exercise rooms and the exercise classes. We understand that by engaging students in practices that promote education, health, and wellness early, it often remains with them throughout their lives. By engaging parents in these practices, we are providing support for the family as a whole.
So we wanted to just leave you with a few project metrics. The entire purpose-built community is 32 acres, of which 19 inside the Loop Road are dedicated to the elementary school and YMCA. The project was constructed for a total cost of just over $29 million and just over $247 per square foot. This schedule, this timeline sort of gives you a sense of this 15-year process from 2005 when the YMCA first began investigating opportunities to actually just this past fall in 2020 when the shelter was opened, this current fall, I should actually say. So the ongoing pandemic has shown the importance of access to green spaces for all. During the design of the Southeast Raleigh YMCA and elementary school, we wanted to maintain a focus on collaborative education and community accessibility while enhancing the outdoor experience for students, teachers, visitors, and patrons. The connection of indoor and outdoor learning environments is one of the project's most successful moments, and it was instrumental in really bridging the programs of an elementary school and a YMCA into something that can be far greater than the sum of the parts. And that concludes our presentation, and we just wanted to, if you would like to contact any of the today's speakers, we've left you with email addresses here. Thank you.